Greetings, gents, and welcome to episode 17 of Econoclasm. Today I will be talking about conspiracy theories. Now, this is a pretty broad topic and one that people can get touchy over, and we'll see if YouTube throttles the algorithm because I mentioned this topic, but I'm pretty close to throttled as can be just with normal things, so we'll see. But let me start off with saying that I'm not going to be trying to convince anyone of any particular conspiracy theory in this episode, or really even just trying to discuss or highlight anyone in particular. That's not what this episode is about. Now, granted, there's probably several conspiracy theories that I do believe in, but again, I'm not here to discuss those. Now, I did technically record a conspiracy theories episode a while ago, but that was while I was rather drunk, and I never listened back to it. Granted, I never listened to any of my episodes back, but I don't know if I want to. Maybe eventually I'll release that. I mean, just that was a bonus one, just be fun. But I'll be doing this one fresh right now. But there's three main things I want to go over for this. Firstly is the origin of the term conspiracy theory, which is itself supposedly a conspiracy theory, or at least one idea of where the term comes from. I'm also going to talk about how to think about conspiracy theories when learn about one or someone tells you about one. And lastly, I'm going to go over how to, what's the word I'm looking for, utilize or talk about them in terms of the overall political context when you're trying to make any political points. The drunk version of this episode that I did was about 46 minutes long. I'm going to try not to make this one that long, despite the fact that I've got three separate subjects under the conspiracy theory umbrella I want to hit. But that was 46 minutes of drunken rambling, so perfectly sober, I should be able to do it rather quickly comparatively. Now, for the conspiratorial origin of the term conspiracy theory, is that essentially the term was, I don't think it was necessarily created, but co-opted, or made famous in the wake of the JFK assassination, in which case, shout out to the files being released, or what files were released. I haven't read them. I don't really know what's in them. I haven't seen too much about it, but I suppose this is an apt episode with them just getting released recently. But again, I have no idea what's in it or what it says, whether it was the mob, the Russians, the CIA, if his head just decided to do that. I don't know. My money's on the last one, personally, but the term conspiracy theory was, however you want to say it, put out there in the wake of the JFK assassination, specifically the Warren Commission that released the report on what happened. And it was basically used to describe people who didn't believe the official story. Now, the conspiracy part comes from the idea that the CIA basically fed their media agents, operatives, partners, whatever, through Operation Mockingbird, which is not a conspiracy theory. You can very easily find out that Operation Mockingbird was a genuine thing where the CIA basically worked with the media to do CIA propaganda and put out what the CIA wanted to be said over the media. And the conspiracy for the term is that the CIA pushed the usage of the term in a derogative manner through the media for anyone who didn't agree with the official Warren Commission findings. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people say the CIA was behind or involved with the JFK assassination, was because they made use of the term to disparage people who wouldn't accept the official story. And the term has obviously in modern day taken on a very negative connotation, where people will disparage someone by saying an idea they have is a conspiracy theory, or that they're a conspiracy theorist, and that it takes on a very disparaging tone when used against someone. So it's essentially just, CIA, through their control of the media back in the 60s, putting this out there as a term to make people seem to essentially discredit people and their ideas by just dismissing it as a conspiracy theory, or dismissing them as a conspiracy theorist. And you see that thrown around all the time now with anytime someone has a story that's against the official narrative. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, that's just a conspiracy theory. And people use it to shut down anyone with ideas that go against the official narrative, which usually end up being true a few years later when the major thing is passed. COVID in the Wuhan lab, Fauci and the gain of function research, the lack of WMDs in Iraq, all of it. When it first came out, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're making shit up, that's fake news or misinformation. A few years later, oh yeah, that's actually what was true, but But that's the origin of the term, and how it took on the connotation it has today, and how it's used. But as for how should people react to a conspiracy theory when they hear it, or I'm going to use conspiracy theory in the most neutral sense possible, outside of the negative connotation it's been given over the years. Basically, a theory that is against the official narrative, because that's really how it's used by the media today, and by the public as a whole. Basically, treat it like you do any sort of idea, theory, rumor, what have you. Take the approach of maybe. To immediately accept or immediately dismiss anything is very intellectually dishonest and evident of a weak mind that just operates on its own biases. Now, does that mean there aren't conspiracies that you can immediately disregard for the most part? In theory, yeah. If someone's like, oh, the moon is fake, I don't have much of a problem with you immediately saying, I'm not gonna give into that theory. No, you've never been to the moon, and someone could make a few points like, well, whatever. I don't know the arguments there, but I don't have a problem with you immediately saying, yeah, no, that's false. Obviously, the moon is up there. There are some conspiracy theories that you can toss out, and there's probably some that you can immediately accept, like, yeah, members of Congress commit insider trading a lot. I don't think that's really a conspiracy theory. That's kind of just fact that everyone basically knows and just accepts as a reality of the society we live in. But you should approach any theory with an open mind, and take the idea of, well, what's the evidence for it, or what's the evidence against it? let someone make the argument. Now, it doesn't mean you have to engage with people when they like, hey, I've got a conspiracy theory to tell you, but more so intellectually, how do you react to a conspiracy theory? Just let yourself have some intellectual integrity and honesty and maturity to not immediately accept or immediately reject an idea, especially based off of your own initial biases. Believe me, I have my biases, and it's a lot easier to accept certain conspiracy theories because, oh yeah, I could totally see that, so it would be easy to believe a certain conspiracy theory, but that doesn't mean you should. If you don't want to deal with them, or you don't care if it's true or not, you don't have to. You don't have to listen to the argument or do research. You can say, I don't care, I'm moving on. But if you want to have some idea or engage with the ideas, have an open mind, approach it with the idea that it could be true or it could be false, and just operate from there. There's not much I really need to say on that matter. Just like I've already said, engage in the research if you want to make a conclusive decision or a more educated decision on if you want to accept it or reject it, if you want to engage in it. But don't immediately say, oh, that's obviously false because that's not the official narrative, or, oh, this isn't what they're saying, so this must be true. It goes both ways on that regard. Just like me after some alcohol. Now, for those of you who do believe in conspiracies, or, have good reason to, how you utilize them or discuss them or use them as an argument point if you have some bigger objective or goal that conspiracy is used to achieve. Generally, I would say stay as far away from conspiracies as possible. Not that, just because it's not the official narrative means it's bad or that you have to avoid it. If it's true, talk about it. Especially if it's not the official narrative. I think a conspiracy theory by nature isn't the official narrative, but you should always get the truth out there. Especially when all the powers that be, the government, the media, the institutions, the NGOs, the IGOs, is that the acronym I'm looking for? I think. But especially if they're all pushing an official narrative that is false, you want to argue against it and fight back and get the actual truth out there, like with, COVID. But when it comes to larger political points, I don't think you need conspiracy theories to make the points. And if someone can only be convinced by conspiracy theories, I don't think they really hold the idea you're trying to get across legitimately. Like, just as an example, let's say gun rights. Obviously, gun rights are good. You want as many guns in the hands of private citizens as possible to resist, government tyranny. Do you really need, the idea of these mass shootings being false flags or government hoaxes to argue for gun rights? No. It doesn't matter if the government's creating fake shootings or just utilizing real ones to push gun control. Gun rights are an objective good, and you can argue for gun rights regardless of the conspiracy theories surrounding mass shootings. Now, this is the part where I say I'm not going to attempt to discuss any particular conspiracies or try to push any or try to dispel any, which I didn't say at the start that I wasn't going to try to dispel any, but I'm not going to attack any particular conspiracy as oh, this is obviously false. Well, I'm not going to try and convince anyone of a particular conspiracy theory, but I'm just saying there are conspiracy theories about mass shootings. But it doesn't matter in the context of, say, gun rights. If someone can only support gun rights and oppose gun control if you convince them that the government is faking mass shootings or perpetrating them themselves, they don't really believe in gun rights. And I don't think they're going to stick with it if it takes that to convince them that they need guns. If they can look at all the government does and say, you know what, yeah, there should be gun control, but making them believe in, these mass shooting conspiracies, then they're like, oh, okay, no, actually, no, now I'm pro-gun. That person's not really believing in the idea of gun rights, because you gotta believe in it in principle, not just in utilitarian nature. It's the same thing with, one of my favorite, most important quotes I've ever read, which was just Rothbard's, "Do you hate the state?" And it means opposition to the state on a pure moral basis, rather than, oh, well, without the state we can be more efficient economically. The David Friedman reason to be an ANCAP. But you have to believe in the idea from a moral, objective standpoint. And you don't get that through conspiracy theory. There's conspiracies that evil lizard people are running the government. Look, I can oppose government tyranny without, whether they're evil lizards or just corrupt humans. It doesn't matter either way. Now, if they are evil lizards, that needs to be known. But it's not like I'm going to accept tyranny because they're humans, but I won't accept it because they're lizards. Oppose government tyranny as a principle. And yeah, I don't like how the term conspiracy has taken on such a negative connotation, or how people are so quick to believe the official narrative and fight against anything that's not the official narrative. But you need to get people on board with ideas from a principled standpoint, rather than argue these wild, a lot of the time they are wild ideas, or just having to fight back against programming people brought up in government schools or from the media. That's a really hard barrier to break through with conspiracy theories. It's easier to get there through a principled standpoint. And then if you can make someone anti-government, it's easier to be like, okay, now here's these ideas that really show you how evil the government truly is. But I don't think you need that. Get them on board with the ideas first, and then you can bring up whatever conspiracy theories you believe in. Get them to believe that war is immoral, and that the U.S. foreign policy is morally wrong. Then, if you believe 9/11 was an inside job, then you can be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this. but it does hurt the, I guess, optics of the morally right side if you're focused on conspiracies. Because a lot of the times it does make you look crazy. You know, if you're trying to say the U.S. government is behind mass shootings or 9/11 or what have you, to a normal person, you do look crazy. I'm not saying it's wrong to believe in those things. Have your ideas. Like I said, there are conspiracies I believe in. Not necessarily saying anything related to either of those two subjects. But you can get people turned off of right ideas with bad arguments, or by just going too hard in the paint with what arguments you use. The government is evil enough in the open that you can expose its wicked nature by its own admission. I am always on the side of truth. But the most important truth when it comes to the government is that it is an ontological evil by itself. We don't need conspiracy theories to reveal that to the general public, in making the idea of opposing the government look like a crazy person's belief. Just point out what the government says it does, and you can make people hate it. Alright, thanks for listening, and above all else, fuck the government.